silence is never empty. It echoes with everything we didn't say, and a woman hears every word of it. When communication ends, especially suddenly or without explanation, it doesn't land as neutral. It doesn't offer relief. For the person on the receiving end, particularly a woman who's emotionally invested, that silence doesn't feel like space to breathe. It feels like rejection. You may think you're creating peace by withdrawing, stepping back to avoid conflict, or giving what you believe is room. But from her side, silence doesn't feel gentle. It feels like a door closing in slow motion, one she didn't know she'd walk through until it slammed shut behind her. And that slamming isn't loud, it's quiet, painfully quiet. That's the thing about silence, it carries weight. In the absence of words, she starts to listen more carefully to what's not being said. Every hour that passes without a response, every message left unanswered, every change in tone or energy, those aren't overlooked. They're studied, dissected, internalized. Not because she's overly sensitive, but because women are often trained to find meaning in the margins of relationships, to make sense of vague emotional signals, to decode silence like it's a secret language, and that kind of interpretation becomes exhausting. What you may see as distance, she experiences as a slow, creeping disconnection, one she starts to believe she caused. That's how silence becomes not just rejection, but self-doubt. She'll start scanning everything she said, replaying conversations, wondering what shifted. She'll ask herself questions you never answer. Did I say too much? Did I ask for too much? Was I too much? And still, no response, just more quiet. Silence is cruel in its ambiguity. It doesn't tell her if you're angry or tired or scared or done. It tells her nothing, and in that nothing, she begins to imagine everything. That kind of rejection isn't clean, it's messy, because it's not based on clarity or truth. It's based on guessing, and that makes the wound harder to heal. Here's the hard part. The very silence that you may think is preserving the relationship, keeping things from getting worse, is the very thing that breaks her. Because in silence, there is no closure, no context, no shared reality, just a growing distance that she feels obligated to fill on her own. And she will, at great emotional cost. You may think you're giving her space, but what she hears in the silence is, "You don't matter enough for a conversation." And that doesn't feel like peace. That feels like abandonment. And when someone feels emotionally abandoned, even while you're still physically present, it cuts deeper than any argument ever could. When a man stops talking to a woman, when the messages grow cold, the calls fade, and the emotional presence vanishes without explanation, something subtle but profound happens inside her. She doesn't just experience the loss of connection, she starts creating a story to survive the silence. Human beings are wired for meaning. When something important happens and we don't understand why, the mind refuses to leave it alone. It starts to piece things together. It tries to make sense of what hurts. It searches for narrative, for logic, even when there's none to be found. That's not drama. That's the brain protecting the heart. And for a woman who's emotionally invested, this mental storytelling becomes an act of self-preservation. She's not doing it to dramatize the situation. She's doing it because silence is too heavy to carry without context. At first, she'll try to be rational. She'll tell herself you're just busy, that maybe you're going through something, that maybe you're giving space to avoid conflict. But eventually, the absence of words starts to sound like confirmation that something is wrong. And since you're not saying anything, she starts to speak for you inside her own mind. She creates dialogue you never had, arguments you never finished. She hears the breakup speech you didn't give and plays out endings you never confirmed. All of this happens without your input because your silence left a blank page. And the thing about blank pages is that they beg to be filled. She doesn't create this story because she wants to. She does it because your refusal to speak forced her into the role of both author and reader. She has to figure out the why by herself. So she goes through everything, past messages, small moments, subtle changes. She remembers when your good morning texts slowed down, when your tone shifted, when your laughter stopped reaching your eyes. She pulls these pieces together and makes them mean something. Often that something points back to her. That's the real tragedy. When you don't finish the story, she often writes a version where she's the problem. She'll convince herself she talked too much or didn't talk enough, that she was too emotional, not supportive enough, too available, too distant, too intense, not enough. She scans herself point by point, searching for flaws you never mentioned and issues you never addressed. That self-interrogation, it's brutal, and she does it all without you knowing, while you assume she's just giving it time. But time doesn't soothe wounds that are never explained. Time in silence isn't healing, it's corrosive. It breaks her confidence slowly. Every day you say nothing. And the worst part is, even if the truth isn't as dark as the story she created, her body has already felt it like it was. See, the brain doesn't know the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. That means the anxiety she experiences while wondering if you're ghosting her, replacing her, or just slowly detaching. Her nervous system treats it like it's happening in real time. Her heart races, her stomach turns, her sleep is disrupted, her appetite fades. That's not overreacting. That's her body keeping score of uncertainty. She may cry in secret, question her worth, spiral between hoping you'll return and bracing for the moment you don't. And all of this comes down to one simple thing. You left her with unanswered questions. You refused to finish the emotional conversation you started when you first gave her your attention, your affection, your care. You planted seeds of connection, and when they began to bloom, you walked away without tending to them. And now she's left in a garden of confusion, picking petals off memories and wondering what was real and what wasn't. She'll talk to her friends, but they won't have your answers. She'll scroll through old texts, but they won't reveal the missing piece. And when she finally stops trying to figure it out, it won't be because she's over it. It'll be because she's exhausted, because writing and rewriting a story that only you can truly finish is emotionally draining beyond words. And eventually, when she does move on, it won't be because she found the truth. It'll be because she gave herself permission to stop needing it. She'll let the story end without resolution. She'll close the chapter you wouldn't, fold it up, and put it away. But don't be mistaken, that act takes immense strength. It's not apathy, it's grace. It's a woman choosing her peace over your silence, choosing to heal in the absence of closure. But remember this, the story she wrote in your silence may linger far longer than your presence ever did. When communication breaks down and a man withdraws, whether slowly or suddenly, the emotional labor in the relationship doesn't disappear. It simply shifts, and more often than not, it shifts entirely onto her shoulders. She becomes the one who carries the weight of everything unspoken, unresolved, and unacknowledged. And while from the outside, this can look like patience or resilience, what it really is emotional exhaustion. Emotional. You might think you're taking space or avoiding unnecessary conflict by going quiet, but the emotional energy that used to be shared between two people doesn't vanish. It doesn't dissolve. It gets transferred. And the woman you stopped talking to now holds it all. She holds the silence, the confusion, the uncertainty. She starts managing not just her own emotions, but yours too, despite the fact that you've offered her nothing to work with. No words, no clarity, no emotional presence. So she begins to overthink, not because she's dramatic or needy, but because when someone she cares about withdraws, her nervous system reacts. She becomes hyper-aware. She replays past conversations. She looks for subtle changes in tone, timing, energy. She starts decoding texts that once felt easy. A one-word reply that used to mean nothing now feels like a red flag. A missed call now feels like an echo of loss. And while she's trying to make sense of what's happening, she's also trying to regulate herself. She tells herself not to jump to conclusions, not to be too much, not to chase, not to text first again. She's managing her disappointment, her sadness, her hope, her restraint, all at the same time. That is emotional labor, and it's invisible. It doesn't show up in dramatic displays or breakdowns. It shows up in quiet restraint, in sleepless nights, in the ache of waiting for a message that doesn't come. What makes it worse is that she can't talk to you about it because you've gone quiet, and she doesn't want to seem like she's pressuring you, so she starts bottling things up. She edits herself. She crafts careful messages. She anticipates your reactions before you even give them. That too is emotional labor, predicting, managing, and softening herself so you're more comfortable, even while she's deeply uncomfortable. She becomes the emotional anchor for a relationship that's floating. She starts doing the work of two people. She processes the emotional distance you're creating and tries to bridge it by staying calm, being understanding, offering you the benefit of the doubt. And while you may feel detached or emotionally neutral, she's carrying the weight of both your silence and her internal dialogue about what that silence means. You might think your silence is neutral, but from her side, it's active. It forces her into emotional motion, into mental gymnastics, constant recalibration, and emotional self-discipline, because she still cares. And caring without clarity is exhausting. She's not just wondering how you feel, she's wondering if she's even allowed to ask. She's questioning when things shifted, why they did, and whether she's imagining it. And because there's no communication, she holds it all in. She keeps the peace, even as she unravels inside. This is what no one talks about, the way emotional labor becomes a quiet burden. It doesn't come with a dramatic explosion. It builds in moments that seem small. She keeps things light in conversation so she doesn't scare you away. There's a kind of grief no one prepares you for, the kind where the person you're mourning is still alive. You see their name on your screen, you scroll past their photo, maybe even past them on the street, and yet they're already gone. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, intimately. The version of them you once had, the one who showed up, who listened, who laughed with you, leaned into you, chose you. That version no longer exists in your world. And you're left grieving someone who hasn't died, but who has disappeared in every way that mattered. That's what happens when you go silent on a woman. When you withdraw emotionally, stop engaging, stop talking, stop showing up in the way you once did, she starts to grieve you, even if you're still technically there, because it's not about presence, it's about connection. She feels the shift in your energy before you ever say a word. She notices when the warmth in your voice cools down. She catches the delays in your replies, the half-hearted attention, the lack of curiosity, and slowly she begins to realize that the you she knew is fading. At first, she tries to rationalize it. She tells herself, maybe you're just busy. Maybe you're going through something and don't know how to talk about it. She gives you grace, space, patience. But when the silence stretches on and the emotional distance grows wider, something inside her begins to shift. Hope starts to decay into confusion. Confusion begins to rot into sadness. And that sadness becomes a quiet kind of mourning. She won't tell you she's grieving you, not at first, because even she doesn't fully understand what's happening. There was no funeral, no breakup, no final argument, no door closed loudly enough to feel final. But you stopped holding her in your emotional world. You stopped inviting her into your thoughts. You stopped choosing her, and that invisible exit, it hurts just as much as a real goodbye, sometimes more, because it offers no closure. She starts remembering little things and feeling the sting of their absence, the way you used to check in just to hear her voice, the way your eyes lit up when she walked into the room, the way you reached for her hand without thinking. Now those moments play in her mind like home movies from a time that no longer exists. And she begins to grieve not just you, but the US that never got to fully live. She'll catch herself rereading old messages, replaying conversations, wondering where things changed. And the more she revisits the memories, the more distant they feel, like photographs of someone who's still alive but no longer belongs to her. That's the cruelest part. You're still here, somewhere, living your life, perhaps even smiling at someone else, while she silently buries version after version of what you were together. This kind of grief is silent. It's private. It doesn't scream or beg. It just lingers, like smoke in a room long after the fire has been put out. It follows her through her day. It clings to her in quiet moments. It steals her appetite, her sleep, her ease. She may still show up to work, still laugh with friends, still post like everything's fine. But inside, something is unraveling. Something is aching in a place words can't quite reach. What makes this grief unique is its invisibility. No one brings flowers. No one says, "I'm sorry for your loss," because technically, she didn't lose anything. But emotionally, she's lost everything. She's lost the safety of your presence, the rhythm of your affection, the foundation of being chosen. She's lost the future she was still building in her mind, the one that had your name all over it. And the worst part is she still sees you. You're still reachable, still breathing, still posting online, still out in the world, but not for her. You've become a ghost in real time, someone she used to know, someone her heart still whispers for, even as her mind tells her to let go. Grieving someone who is still alive is a kind of emotional purgatory. It's waiting for a message that probably won't come. It's hoping for a return that keeps getting delayed until one day the hope just gives out. It's learning to say goodbye without being given the chance to say it aloud. Eventually, she'll stop grieving you, but not because it didn't matter, not because she didn't love you. She'll stop because healing will become more important than remembering. Peace will matter more than your potential, and loving herself will require her to release the version of you that couldn't stay. But know this, before she lets go, she mourns, deeply, quietly, fully, because when a woman has truly loved you, she doesn't just walk away. She has to grieve you while you're still breathing so she can finally breathe again. There's a moment that comes slowly, quietly, after days or weeks or even months of waiting, hoping, checking, second-guessing, a moment where something inside her shifts. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't slam doors or make a scene. She simply exhales and stops asking, stops wondering, stops reaching out, and that moment, that's when she starts to match your silence. It doesn't happen in a dramatic all-at-once way. At first, it might just look like her delaying her replies or not responding with the same warmth. Maybe she doesn't initiate a check-in like she used to. Maybe she stops sharing parts of her day. These changes are subtle at first, but they're not accidental. They're her way of reclaiming her energy that's been quietly draining every time she tried to pull you back toward her. You might think she's just giving you space, that nothing's changed, but she knows. She knows she's beginning to detach, not because she wants to, but because she has to. There's only so long someone can shout across a canyon before they realize no one's coming back. And when she realizes you're no longer meeting her in the middle, she slowly begins to retreat, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. This isn't the cold shoulder. This isn't punishment. It's self-preservation. She's protecting the parts of herself that started to feel exposed, vulnerable, taken for granted. She's pulling her love, her attention, her emotional availability inward, not to hurt you, but to heal herself. Because eventually, even the most patient woman gets tired of giving into a void. What you need to understand is that her silence doesn't mean she doesn't care. In fact, it often means she cared deeply, for longer than she should have. She gave you room to come back. She gave you the benefit of the doubt. She filled in the blanks you left behind with kindness, with excuses, with hope. But hope has an expiration date. And when it reaches that point, when her nervous system can no longer handle the anxiety of not knowing where she stands, she'll match your silence not out of apathy, but out of clarity. This is the part where most men get confused. They notice the change, but they don't know when it happened. Suddenly, she's not responding like she used to. Her tone feels different. She's not as accessible. And now, because you're not used to her silence, it becomes louder than yours ever was. It startles you, because for the first time, she's not chasing. She's not trying. She's not holding space for your uncertainty anymore. You might interpret this as her being distant, but what it really is her finally understanding that love cannot be held alone. That connection requires two people showing up, not just one person carrying all the emotional weight. She's not being cold. She's just no longer burning herself out trying to warm you up. When she matches your silence, it's not to mirror you out of spite. It's to restore balance, emotional equilibrium, because she gave more than she got. She reached out more than she received. She held the door open long after you stopped walking through it. And now she's learning to close it, not with anger, but with peace. What you don't see is everything she had to go through to get to this point. You didn't see her waking up at 2 a.m., checking her phone. You didn't see her rereading messages, wondering where she went wrong. You didn't hear the conversations she had in her head, the ones where she tried to defend you, understand you, forgive you. You didn't feel her stomach drop when you left her on red. You didn't hear the silence echo in her heart. But now you'll hear it. Because when a woman finally matches your silence, it has a gravity to it. It doesn't beg. It doesn't explain. It doesn't chase. It simply says, I've learned to live without your voice in my life. And maybe you'll reach out, expecting her to respond the way she used to, expecting warmth, softness, the door to still be cracked open. But you'll notice something's changed. Her replies are polite, but not inviting. Her eyes don't linger. Her energy is no longer wrapped around you, and that's when it hits you. The silence you once gave so easily has been returned, and this time it has weight, because her silence is not empty. It is full of boundaries, full of lessons, full of quiet strength. It carries all the words she chose not to say, all the pain she chose not to throw at you, all the love she chose to stop offering. It's the sound of her choosing herself. Eventually, yes, she will match your silence. But by the time she does, understand this. It's not an invitation for you to finally speak. It's the moment she no longer needs you to. When you come back, and chances are you will, you may expect her to be there waiting, maybe not with arms wide open, but at least with a softened heart. Maybe you'll reach out one night when the silence finally settles in your bones and you realize how much she gave you, how easy it was to take her presence for granted. Maybe you'll scroll through old messages and feel the warmth you didn't know you missed until it was gone. Maybe you'll think of something funny or feel a pang of guilt and decide to send that "hey" or "been thinking about you" text. And in that moment, you'll imagine she'll still be there, just slightly out of reach, but still yours. But here's the truth, she might not be. You see, when a woman waits in silence, she isn't just passing time, she's transforming. She's processing everything you didn't say. She's healing from what you didn't do. She's unpacking all the emotions. She had to carry by herself while you went quiet, and she's learning, slowly but surely, that she can survive without you. Not just survive, but grow. The space you left wasn't empty. It was filled with pain, yes, with confusion, absolutely, but also with reflection, with growth, with rediscovery. And while you were off avoiding the conversation, avoiding the responsibility, avoiding her heart, she was in it, fully, feeling everything, mourning what she thought she had with you, wrestling with the duality of loving someone who couldn't show up, questioning her worth, then reclaiming it, breaking down, then building herself back up. So by the time you come back, when the timing feels right for you, you may find a very different version of her. The woman who once waited by the phone no longer does. The one who used to overanalyze every message now barely thinks of you at all. The The one who would have taken you back with a single apology has learned that peace is more valuable than potential. And here's what stings. She did want you to come back. She wanted the apology, the explanation, the clarity. She wanted the story to finish properly, but when it didn't, she wrote her own ending. She closed the chapter in your absence, not because she stopped caring, but because holding on started to hurt more than letting go. What you have to understand is that a woman's heart is not a revolving door. Yes, she might have left it open longer than she should have. She gave you chances, whether you knew it or not. Chances to explain, to reassure, to repair. But silence was the answer you chose. And over time, she learned to stop hoping for a different one. So when you finally reappear, sounding familiar, maybe even sincere, you'll be met with a quiet strength. You'll feel the distance in her voice, not because she's punishing you, but because she's no longer emotionally available to you. That softness you remember, she gave it back to herself. That openness, she's offering it to someone who shows up, not someone who disappears. She's no longer trying to convince anyone of her worth, including you. You may think your return means resolution, but for her, it might feel like a reopening of a wound she worked hard to close. And just because you finally feel ready to talk doesn't mean she's obligated to listen. Just because you miss her doesn't mean she should forget the version of herself she became while you were gone. The version who learned to protect her heart, to trust her intuition, to stop settling for halfway love. That's the thing about time. It doesn't just pass. It teaches, it clarifies, it reveals. And she used that time to understand the difference between someone who loves her and someone who merely misses her, between someone who values her and someone who comes back because they lost something, not because they're ready to give, between someone who disappears when things get hard and someone who stays, speaks, tries. So when you come back, don't assume she's frozen in the same place you left her. She didn't stand still. She didn't wait untouched. She went through something because of you and came out the other side different, wiser, calmer, less available to the kind of love that leaves her questioning everything. You may find yourself apologizing, explaining, trying, and maybe that's what she always deserved. But remember, you gave her silence when she needed words, distance when she needed presence, uncertainty when she needed truth. And the woman you find when you return might not be the woman who once would have forgiven all of that. Because eventually, even the most open-hearted woman learns that closure doesn't always come from the person who hurt her. Sometimes it comes from finally realizing that the return she was hoping for isn't worth reopening the healing she fought so hard for. So yes, when you come back, she might not. And that will be the clearest response your silence ever earned. We think silence protects us. That pulling away is safer than being honest. But connection doesn't die from one loud fight. It dies in the quiet between people who no longer speak truth to one another. If you've stopped talking to her, understand this. You didn't just walk away from a conversation. You walked away from the chance to grow, to be vulnerable, to be known. And sometimes, what a woman does when you stop talking is finally start listening to herself.